Welcome everyone to Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle, our brand new podcast here that I'm embarking with my co-host. I'm Chris Pike, and thanks for joining us. And I'm here with the man that you would all prefer to hear from. And sitting aside me right now is a legend of Australian basketball, a legend of the Perth Wildcats. He's an Olympian. He's an all-time great, and he all started from humble beginnings back in Nebraska. So, Shawn Redhage, it's a pleasure to have you with me. And what brought you to embark on this new adventure?
Well, I'm excited. It's a different medium than I'm probably used to, being out there on the basketball court and be able to, bring the stories behind basketball in Australia and especially the NBL and be able to reach the fans in a different medium. Yeah,
I'm excited too. Obviously, we've known each other for a long time now, so hopefully some of that chemistry can come through. I covered most of your career here in Perth. Obviously, I've had different roles throughout, whether it's the Wildcats or the NBL or different things, mostly in a writing capacity. But I'm excited to now share this journey with you. And first of all, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the great support of Hoop 7. A fantastic basketball store. We'll talk a bit more about them later on in the show, Shawn. But if you ever need any basketball gear, you sure know where to go.
Absolutely. I mean, in Perth City, they've got everything and online as well. So, if you're into your basketball gear, you need a new pair of boots or the latest NBA or NBL jersey, Hoop 7's your place to go. Yeah,
Jason Hughes is a great supporter of ours, and it's fair to say this show wouldn't be coming to you today without his support. So thanks to Jason and his team there. If you'd like to check us out, we've got some social media set up. So if you want to check us out on Facebook, you can just type in Basketball Hustle and you can find us there. We've got an Instagram page, hustle.basketball, and also on Twitter, B-Ball Hustle Pod. So if you want to check us out on any of those formats, feel free to get in touch with us. And if you've got any questions, especially for Shawn, let us know before next week, and we'll chuck them his way throughout the show, and you might get some answers that you've always wanted to know. In terms of a show, Shawn, there's a lot of shows and podcasts, and with the popularity of the NBA right now, it's being talked about more than ever. But with somebody like you being involved, you've played with a lot of different players, you've had a lot of coaches over the years in a lot of different countries. What's something that we can try to bring a little bit different to the podcast landscape?
Well, I guess from our point of view, we just want to be able to bring those insider information, be able to interview some of the players and ask the questions that fans probably always have wanted to ask, but haven't had the chance to, and probably not the, to be able to ask those questions straight after a game or during a news conference or those type of things is probably not the best case. But in this medium, I think we can go delve a little bit deeper and ask those questions that the fans really want to be asked.
Absolutely, and this first episode is a perfect example of that. Somebody that you know incredibly well. Dillon Boucher is our first ever guest, and we'll get to him shortly. But in terms of somebody that you played with, you played against a lot, and a lot of your basketball career is sort of gone hand in hand with his as a teammate or as an opponent. So in terms of first up guests, he's about as good as it gets.
Oh, the word winner just comes to mind when you speak about Dillon, the amount of championships he's won, and such a great teammate, and excited that we're able to have him on our first show.
The other thing is, each week you'll be doing a 2-minute drill segment. Didn't quite go to plan for our first episode, and I had to host it, and it didn't quite turn out to be a 2-minute drill because Damo, as you might know, likes to talk, so it went a bit longer than the 2 minutes. But to have Damian Martin on our first episode, he's somebody that your career in Perth went hand in hand with as well.
Yeah, Damian Martin is an incredible player, leader, teammate, and proud to call him a friend as well. So he's done some incredible things out on the court, and I'm sure that's not the last we're going to hear from Damian Martin this year and in our podcast.
Couple of more quick thank yous. If you've managed to check us out on social media so far, you would notice that we've got a logo made up. So thank you to Veronica Dardell for making that for us. You can check her work out on Instagram at veronicas.design. And also we've got a bit of a caricature done of us both, and make up your own mind if it's flattering to either of us or not. But a pretty familiar name that did that for us, and Brad Robbins, who helped us out there.
Brad Robbins, man of multi-talents, and he's when I first came to Australia, we played against each other when we were playing back in the Seables. So now we're both end up over here in WA, and it's awesome that he can be a part of it as well.
Pretty recent run-in you had with him too. Just we'll move into what you've been doing recently just now, and you managed to share the court with Brad Robbins and Greg Hire this past SBL season when you were playing with the Perry Lakes Hawks, which was quite a bit of a thrill for you.
Yeah, a bit surreal that I guess we've kind of moved on from our NBL days, but still trying to run around there with the young guys out there in the SBL, and it was fun to obviously probably prefer them to be on my team than against him, but a lot of respect for both those guys.
Just touching on your career, Shawn, you don't really need any introduction, but for anybody that needs a reminder of what you did in your career, you might notice that this show is called The Rider and the Scoring Machine for obvious reasons, where I'm the rider and Lockie Reed famously dubbed you the scoring machine for those early seasons you had at the Wildcats, where you just put up some remarkable numbers on a team that couldn't quite compete for a championship, but the numbers you were putting up, 25 points pretty much every season there for about 4 years. So you earned that moniker, but along the way, 380 games of your 393 NBL career came at the Perth Wildcats. You joined Ricky Grace as a six-time Gordon Ellis medalist for the club MVP, which I remember when Ricky won his sixth, nobody thought it was possible for anyone to get close to that. So that was an incredible effort. Four-time championship winner, which is just remarkable. But not only that, you played at the Olympic Games for Australia only months after becoming an Australian citizen, which is a remarkable story in its own right. You've won championships in Puerto Rico, you won Seagull championships. Your first season playing locally in the SBL for the Perth Redbacks, you won a championship. It's a resume that when you look back on, you probably don't want to talk too much about yourself, but you'd have to be proud of.
Oh, look, it was probably the farthest thing from my mind when I came over here to be able to do some of those things. And I guess you're proud of what you've been able to accomplish, probably a lot more than I ever thought possible. So had some incredible teammates, coaches, and support along the way. So it's been an incredible journey, but I'm excited about to learn about the new guys and their journeys and delve deep into what kind of makes them who they are in the league and in basketball. And I guess that's what this show is about, and being able to explore that and find some some inside information that we can to give to our fans. Absolutely.
I'm sure people would be interested though what you've been up to since retiring from the NBL. You retired after the 2017 championship. You've still been playing locally in the SBL, but outside of playing, you've set up Redhage Basketball, which appears to be going from strength to strength. We've seen you on the NBL broadcast, and we'll see you again this season, which is very exciting. Just give us a little bit of a rundown of what you've been up to since retiring from the NBL.
Yeah, well, it's always a hard thing as an athlete going to that next stage of life. You've something that you've done for such a long time. But started Redhage Basketball when I finished playing with the Wildcats, and we do run a lot of programs, camps, and stuff at local schools here. So it's been great to see so many young kids just getting into basketball. I think the resurgence that the NBL has is I'm also seeing that at the ground roots as well. So we're getting year one, year twos, years 5, 6s. They're starting to pick up the basketball and fall in love with the game. And I know what basketball has done for my life and the journey that I've been able to experience. So I'm excited about to pass that on to the next generation. So if you want to check out redhagebasketball.com, go for that. And, it's about providing pathways for basketball all the way from primary school up to the elite level.
Now, all of a sudden, this week we're into the NBL season. It can be a long off season at times from what was it, early March when we saw the Perth Wildcats win another championship to now, but all of a sudden the season's upon us. Before we get into that, it's been a big off season in terms of basketball for a lot of reasons. There was enormous hopes for Australia to win a medal at the FIBA World Cup over in China. They didn't quite get there. As a former Olympian yourself and a former Boomers representative, what did you make of the Boomers World Cup performance?
Look, they were an exciting group to watch. I love the way they played. You could really tell that those guys have played for a number of years together. They just, if you watch the Americans play and then you watch Australia play, it just seemed like they played so much better team-wise. And I think the results show. You really feel for them. I mean, they're about 2 seconds away from a medal. Some of those things, Patty Mills misses a free throw. I mean, that's uncharacteristic of him in the clutch like that. And, I was extremely proud of the way the Boomers played. I think that it was unfortunate. I think they deserved to get a medal and probably even get into that gold medal game as well. So, exciting for Australia basketball. And if you're looking at it, maybe could this be what kind of spurs them on to really, really get something at the next Olympics? Obviously the heartbreak they had at the previous Olympics you thought would kind of spur them on, but sometimes, things don't go your way, and it kind of makes it even, you get a bigger reward than you thought possible. So hopefully that's the case for the Boomers, but I love the way they played, and I think it's unfortunate that they didn't come away with the medal, but I think all Australia is very proud of them.
Absolutely. Turning to the NBL now, later on in the show, after we hear from Dillon and Damian Martin, we'll get into a bit of a breakdown of the teams and we'll give our season predictions. But for now, do you remember a season in the NBL ever with more excitement, not only in Australia but across the world? Given we've got LaMelo Ball playing in the league this season with the hype that comes with him and his family, RJ Hampton, who looks like being a very high draft pick. The excitement around the NBL right now, I don't ever remember feeling it higher.
No, I mean, you're getting on ESPN, SportsCenter over in the U.S., the talk over there about Australian basketball, and just the amount of players that the NBL is sending over there. You've got NBL playing the NBA in the preseason again. So there is a lot of things to like about what the NBL is doing. And even at the preseason, I mean, you might get maybe one scout there in previous years, if any, and there was 27 NBA scouts watching LaMelo Ball play, and his stock draft rose tremendously in a matter of one weekend. Yep. So I think that's what it shows. A credit to the NBL and what they've done and bringing the exposure to the league, and it's exciting times to be a part of.
And on the eve of the season now, massive news over the last 24 hours with Jerome Randall returning to the Adelaide 36ers. We haven't had the season start yet, and we've already had two imports part company with a change of the New Zealand Breakers as well. But for Jerome Randall to now join the Adelaide 36ers on the eve of the season, what does that do for them in terms of them being a contender now for this season?
Well, in Joey Wright's system, Jerome Randall is the perfect player. I mean, he is fast. He's unguardable in a one-on-one situation, and the way they want to play, I think it shows. He was an MVP that year. Probably unfortunate not to get to the grand final and potentially win the championship. So I think it's a great signing, especially with them losing Sobey, who did so much for them the last couple of years. I think they needed a score. They probably didn't see that in the preseason from Taylor, who they needed. So to get Jerome Randall, I think is a huge get. And, I think it kind of puts Adelaide back into the mix for getting to that top four. I think it was going to be tough without him, but I also think it's going to make Daniel Johnson a better player as well, because a two-man game with him and Randall is extremely tough one to guard.
I think Harry Froling could thrive playing alongside him as well. So a combination of DJ and Harry working with Jerome could be pretty exciting. If you're Deshaun Taylor right now, you're in the United States preparing to play against the Utah Jazz, and you'll still play on Sunday and you'll play alongside Jerome. How are you feeling as somebody who knows what it feels like to unfortunately be dumped as an import?
Well, look, I think in any other scenario, you're probably saying, I'm not playing. But when you get to play against the NBA, that's a dream come true for any basketballer, especially one that grows up in the U.S. And your mates get to watch you step out on an NBA floor. So you take that opportunity any day you get. So obviously there's going to be, it's a tough situation. We'll see how it goes, but I think it's just one of those things. You get to play in the NBA, you take that.
Absolutely. Well, like we talked about before we came on air, I think the chance for him to impress to get a new contract, it's a massive chance for him too. So there's positives to take out of every situation. We could easily fill up an hour just talking about what's happening in the NBA right now. We'll get back to it a bit later on after we hear from Dillon Boucher first, and then Damian Martin. But before we go to our first interview, Shawn, your son Dillon had a birthday recently. Where did you go to get his probably his favourite gift?
Yeah, well, he wanted the Giannis Antetokounmpo jersey. He was asking for it for months, so had to go over to Hoops Heaven, and there was none left in town except for at Hoops Heaven. So if you need something basketball-wise, that is the place to go. They got everything.
Absolutely. If anyone's seen me wandering around, you'll know that, especially Detroit Pistons gear, I don't mind putting on, and certainly Hoops 7 and the team there have helped me out more than one occasion. You have a look at my sister, she's always in Boston Celtics gear, and that's where I get it all for her as well. And even my girlfriend Laura now, since she's teamed up with me, she picked the Charlotte Hornets as her club just because she liked the colours, and now she's decked out in Hornets gear as well, and I get all that from Hoops Heaven. And of course this podcast wouldn't be possible without Jason and his team at Hoops Heaven. You can check them out physically. They've got a fantastic store in Murray Street in the Perth city, but if you're not in Perth, hoop7.com.au, and you can order all of the basketball gear you could ever dream of. They're happy to ship it wherever you are. It's a fantastic website, it's a fantastic store, and for them to team up with us, it's a great vote of confidence that somebody's willing to invest in us and to become partners with us. And I just can't speak more highly of Hoops 7 as a store. You can check them out on Facebook at Hoops 7, check them out on Instagram at Hoops 7 AU, and as I said, hoop7.com.au, and yeah, you can go there for everything you need. All your NBA gear, whether it's the latest Nike gear, all your Jordan gear, whether it's your shoes or your shorts or your tracksuits or your jackets. Mitchell and Ness put out some fantastic gear as well. You can find that there. Adidas are putting out some great products at the moment, and you can find that at Hoop 7. New Era, especially their caps are fantastic. All your latest sporting gear and first ever gear as well. If you want to get decked out in your latest NBL gear, then check out Hoop 7 as well.
I think you covered it all right there. They've got everything, and I think that Hoop 7 is, basketball is having a resurgence, and knowing Jason as well, just talking, just the interest in the NBL and NBA, the stuff's flying off the stores there.
Absolutely. So thanks to Jason and Hoop 7, and now we'll get into our first interview here on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle with Dillon. Very first show of Basketball Hustle. I'm here with Shawn Redhage, obviously, and our very first guest, Dillon Boucher, a man that Shawn obviously knows very well from battles with and against over his career, and obviously having to see Dillon celebrate some championships wasn't ideal, but obviously Dillon's a legend of Australian and New Zealand basketball. So, Dillon Boucher, thanks for joining us here on Basketball Hustle.
No, pleasure. Great to be on your first show, and great to be chatting hoops.
Absolutely, yeah. We appreciate you taking the time. First of all, it's been an eventful couple of weeks for you. What are you up to at the moment?
To be honest, I was chainsawing trees down today, so I want to say I'm a man of leisure, but I'm definitely filling the void of all the jobs that I've probably been procrastinating on for the last 6 months. So I've been getting stuck into it, and in between doing that, trying to find a job. So it's been an eventful few days. Yeah,
absolutely. Tracing back a couple of weeks now, obviously on the eve of the season, it's a big decision to leave the role you're in at the Breakers as general manager. Can you just talk us through what was behind that, and I guess how difficult of a decision it was?
Yeah, it was a really difficult decision. I mean, it's been a huge part of my life, being involved with the Breakers, and to I guess leave that behind. It's been who I am for a long time, and so it was a really, really hard decision. But at the same time, I felt like the time was right. So, I sat down with my family and talked it through about what could be on the horizon, and it's always tough when you're in a role for a long time. People kind of, I guess, just expect you to stay in that role, and I knew that if I was available, that I would have more opportunities come my way. So I felt like the timing was right to step aside and explore new opportunities, I guess, and again get to reassess where I go from here.
And just going through that, I guess, decision, Dillon, and you said it yourself that you've been with the Breakers for such a long time. How did you find that transition going from a player, a championship player with so much success, and then kind of moving into that front office? Because you don't see a lot of players doing that, and I guess just curious to find out your transition and how that went.
Yeah, it's a good question, Shawn. It's kind of an interesting one for me because I guess when I kind of became towards the end of my career, I sat down with Paul Blackwell and we kind of talked through, when I would finish up playing, and he was asking me when am I looking to retire, and I was kind of talking about what life after basketball would bring, and I think the big thing for me was always I wanted to do something that I was passionate about, which was staying involved with the sport, but at the same time, I wanted to have security for my family. I've got four children. I've got 4 children, and I wanted to make sure that I was providing for them and having a stable, I guess, income coming in to be able to look after them. So for me, it was, he sort of said, "Do you want to go down the coaching route, or do you want to go down the commercial route?" And to be honest, my heart was telling me that I really wanted to go down the coaching route, but I've been around so many outstanding coaches that go from job to job and have to end up playing their trade elsewhere, overseas or in different places, and I didn't really want to have to be moving my family all around, so my head was saying to me the commercial route was the way to go. So while the last 3 years of playing, I was able to start on that, I guess, career path and start selling corporate hospitality and sponsorship while I was still playing, and when the time came when I finally announced my retirement, they said to me that I'd done a great job and they wanted me to stay on and do that full time for the club, and that was like a dream come true to go straight out of playing and straight into a role with a club and an organisation that I held so dearly and had poured my heart out on the court. I was able to then go and try and do that off the court as well and try and help the club be sustainable.
And you talked about the Blackwells as well, and just from afar, I know you and I were at the Breakers early on, and then the Blackwells kind of came in a little bit after we left, and just from the outside, they just looked like they just had their hearts in the right place. They did some tremendous things, but just looked like the players loved to play for them. Can you just talk to us about Blackwell and kind of, I guess, the legacy they left with the Breakers?
Yeah, absolutely. The Blackwell family are probably, the most generous, kind family that you'll ever meet, and they got involved in basketball because their eldest son James had got into basketball, and they really wanted to use basketball as a vehicle to engage with the community and particularly engage with families, fatherless families, and that's kind of where the whole, I guess, legacy started. So the whole thing between the club was about the club operating under a kind of like a family operation and operating under some sets of values that everybody lives day to day by, and that was kind of where it all started, and that was kind of the foundation that had been laid, and then it was about working through being good role models in the community, being the most accessible basketball team most accessible team in New Zealand sport. So being approachable by community, by media, by whoever wants to engage with us, and that's kind of where they set the bar. And to be honest, when we left, Shawn, and how much it had changed from the time I'd come back was night and day. And again, the guys who are in the team kept telling me how things had changed, and when I came back, I saw it firsthand. And I truly believe that's the reason why the club has had so much success, because of the culture that they built. Obviously we had some good players that have played for the club, but they hadn't laid that foundation of those values and that culture that they built. I don't think the club would have had any success. Yeah,
dude, I agree with that. Looking at it from the outside of just the change that they brought to that club, and we'd probably. And we went from a team where we couldn't recruit any Australians to all of a sudden we were a team that we were getting approached by Australian players to come and play for, and it was probably a big coup, and getting CJ Bruton to come across and play for the club, and that would never have happened if Paul and Liz weren't there, and because the players had spoke so highly of them, and you only have to meet them once to know they are genuine people, and what they say is exactly how they are, and
whatever they promise you, they're always going to deliver, and that's something that's so important in sport. And as a player, as you know, you want that security, knowing that the ownership group has got your back 100%.
Well, I agree with that. And just, you're not the first player to say that as well. So, when it gets backed by a couple different players, that's what's happening, and word spreads around the league pretty quickly. Just at the Breakers now, obviously they've transition period. They've had a lot of success over the years, but a lot of those guys are gone now, yourself included, and you've got the new ownership group there with Matt Walsh and a few of the NBA guys as well. What differences have you seen that they brought, and where do you see the Breakers going this year?
Yeah, I mean, like we've talked a lot about the Blackwells and how good they are, and then, but there's certain things in basketball that could never have been achieved probably under their ownership, and the RJ Hampton one's probably the first thing that springs to mind. Like, there's no way without the connections that Matt has in the States and through with Shawn Redhage and people like that, there's no way that we would have ever been able to secure a player like RJ Hampton to the club. And just again, the commercial, I guess has driven, how much Matt has driven through commercial is probably what Paul and Liz didn't. I wouldn't say Paul and Liz lacked, but they were focused on community, and they hoped that there would be commercial outcomes because of their engagement with the community. But I guess Matt and his ownership group have a far more really commercial focused attitude going in, because they know for the club to be sustainable, it really has to be successful commercially.
It's an interesting balance, isn't it? You're probably in a better position than anyone to have a good view of it, where probably for the club as a whole to go to the next level, to become a global brand, which it seems like what Matt and the new ownership structure are very keen on making happen, but then also trying to get the balance right of keeping your history. Were you a little, I know you were involved in the decision making, but a little disappointed that guys like obviously Mika and Alex Pledger and Shea Ili and probably even Paulie Hanari aren't at the club now, while the club has made this transition into, I guess, the new era that they're going on under with Matt in charge?
Yeah, it's tough anytime you see legends, walk out the door and go to other clubs or go on to other things. It's always something that's tough, and especially for myself, I was in that general manager role, and these guys are good friends of mine, and I'm seeing them go to other clubs and take all their skill set and all their knowledge and take it to another club. It's always hard, and it's always those that's probably the one part of the job I absolutely hated was having those discussions with people, and then end up losing players, or you end up losing people, and that's the part I hated most about it. And yeah, it's very sad to see those type of guys playing for other clubs now and not for the Breakers. And one of the things that was Paul and Liz were able to do is they were able to keep the best New Zealand talent playing on the shores of New Zealand. And most players, if you ask, they would probably rather play at home than play elsewhere. That's having the comforts of home is always something that's pretty special.
Is there one player that meeting was probably the toughest that you had, that you knew was going to go play somewhere else?
To be honest, they're all tough. None of them were tougher than the other, but the one for me that was really hard was when Paulie decided to step down, and it was a tough one because I'd been sitting in those meetings with the three of us, myself, Matt, and Paulie, and we'd been going back and forth, and it was a tough time because Matt had come in as a new owner, and he didn't know people well enough, so he was making decisions based on information that, or from what as I had told him, and someone like Paulie wanted security at the club and those sorts of things. So those are decisions, and you're sitting and then you can feel it slipping through your hands, and I could feel it sitting in those meetings knowing that it wasn't going the right way, and trying to salvage it, but it just wasn't to be. And Paulie's gone on and been able to focus his time on the Tall Blacks and on the New Zealand NBL with the Wellington Saints. So he was fine once it had all happened. But it's one of those ones that's always tough to sit in those meetings and watch things happen.
Yeah, I'd imagine that would have been a tough one, just knowing the history that you guys had, not only as players, but then obviously move that into the management side and the coaching side. And, there's a lot of respect for both of you guys around the league. And I guess one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today as well is just how you became the player you were, because, if you looked at your stats, you wouldn't say this guy was a 13-time champion, 4-time NBL champion. Just the impact you had on the game. Where did that come from? Because you just had a unique ability. I kind of compare you to Damian Martin and Mika Vakona, guys that can just affect the game, but you not necessarily show up on the stat sheet. So can you just talk to us a little bit about your history and how you developed the style of play that you played with?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's funny because a lot of parents come up to me and go, "Oh, my son's just like you. He doesn't score and he just plays defense." And and I always think to myself, well, when I was that age, all I cared about was scoring. Like when I was a kid, I just wanted to score the basketball, and I was able to do it. In the lower levels, and I guess as I got up to the higher levels, I realised that that I had a skill set that was unique, and I had a good knowledge of the game, that I could see things unfolding before they unfolded, and I was able to read the game in a way that I thought everyone could do, but as I got older I realised they couldn't. And probably the first person to identify that was Tab Baldwin, who was the All Black coach for many years, and he said to me that I've just got an uncanny ability to be able to read the game, and my basketball IQ is really high. As a kid, I didn't run a single play until I left high school. We didn't even run plays in high school. It was just pretty much get the ball and try and do what you can to score. There was no plays or run. And I think to my son playing high school basketball now, and they're running 10 different plays out there, and I'm thinking, when I was his age, I had never even run a play. So it's kind of crazy to I guess IQ is just one of those things that you either have or you haven't got, and it's something that I was blessed with and lucky, because I wasn't blessed with many other talents on the basketball court as far as athleticism and things like that. So I guess I relied on my knowledge of the game. I relied on my ability to be able to read situations in games and try and outsmart players that you were playing against by knowing what moves they were going to make and cutting them off, and then being able to set players up by with passes and screens and things like that. So being able to, I guess, impact the game in a positive way. And it probably started when my first, as an 18-year-old, was playing for the Auckland team in the New Zealand NBL, and I realised to get minutes I had to play defence. So if I played good defence, that Tab would reward me by leaving me on the court, and they would send me out there and put me on the imports and say, don't let the guy touch the ball. So I knew if I could do a good job doing it, I would stay out there, and that's kind of how I bought into that whole, I guess, defensive mentality. I knew that every team needs someone who can play D on there, and there's always going to be a star player on another team that needs to be shut down, and that's kind of, I guess, the role I tried to fill.
I think it's a good point, especially if you've got young people listening to the podcast as well, is that, I think the best players evolve. You're not going to be able to play the same role every single time you're on a team. So when you were younger, I imagine you were the best player, so you had to go score. But, if you want to play in a league for a long time, and obviously the success that you had to adapt your game. And I think it's something that probably isn't celebrated as much, but, from a guy who was a teammate of yours, but then also had to compete against you, I think there's tremendous amount of respect. And I just remember there was one time Scott Fisher was going through it was when you were with the Bullets, and he was, pre-game, he was going through the lineup. He spent about 30 seconds on CJ Bruton, who was probably leading the league in scoring at the time. And he spent about 4 or 5 minutes on you and how we had to stop you and just the impact that you'd have when you get check into the game. So, you probably don't hear that too often, but it's, you just wanted to share that with you, and, the tremendous amount of respect around the league for what you were able to accomplish and being a winner out there as well.
No, I appreciate it. And funnily, the thing that I would always judge my success on was how many other fans were giving me heaps. You know, I know if the fans weren't yelling, crass remarks to me, I realised I wasn't making an impact out there. So it was always said, as long as people are still saying derogatory things out of the stands, I know I'm upsetting somebody, and I know I must be doing a good job to stop their team's rhythm. And that's kind of I always use that as a gauge of success. And when I'd see my teammates would struggle with people saying things, I say that's a good thing. If no one's saying anything about you, then no one cares about what you're doing on the court. If the fans are caring what you're doing, then you're doing something right. So I always kind of used to laugh at when people would get upset or when people would say stuff to them. So it's a compliment. Take it as a compliment.
Oh, Shawn knows all about that as well as anybody too, obviously. The unique thing about doing this show with Shawn is that we get to talk to people like you who've got a history with him from his career, and you're one of the unique ones who got to play with and against Shawn. Obviously, you had that half a season together at the Breakers, then you had a season together in Perth, and then together you were part of that historic, Breakers Wildcats rivalry that will always look on forever. When you think about Shawn as a teammate and an opponent, what immediately springs to mind?
No one works harder than this guy. I don't think people appreciate, Shawn's game for what it was and how hard he worked at his game. I mean, there was a time when, we were in Perth and we lived in the same building, and this guy would, I would be absolutely done at training, and he would say to me, I'm going to lift some weights, do you want to come? And I'd be like, no, I'm done. And he would be off lifting weights and doing stuff. And I always considered myself one of the hardest workers. And, this guy showed me that, he works, harder than anybody. And, the way Shawn came back from his hip injury that, we all thought he was done. We were like, there's no way, there's no way he's coming back. And he came back and was still able to compete at the highest level, and that's phenomenal for a player to be able to do that. And like I say, I had to guard him at trainings, and there's guys just that have a knack of scoring and can get things done. He had a knack of scoring and being able to get things done, and I absolutely hated having to compete against him as well, because he would out sprint you down the floor, and and then he would battle you physically, and there was nothing he wasn't willing to do to make sure his team had success at the end of the day.
Well, thanks for those kind words, Dillon. It was, tell you what, we had some good battles. Every time when I was your teammate, every time I was on the court, my eyes lit up, because I knew if I made a cut or something, you were going to find me, and you'd be one of the first picks that I'd have as a teammate on the court. So, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today, and it's been great to kind of see the inside of New Zealand basketball, and I guess a little bit on your career, and where do you see the NBL and New Zealand basketball? Everyone's talking about how exciting it is, and are you seeing that over there in New Zealand as well, the rise of basketball in the country?
Yeah, the rise of basketball is huge over here. The participation numbers are going through the roof. The level of talent in high school that's coming through. We've got, good young talent coming through. We've got outstanding, hard-working players over here that have realistic dreams of playing in the NBA because of, the likes of Stephen Adams and looking at the Australians and guys like Paddy Mills and Andrew Bogut, and these are guys with Dellavedova, guys that are just like them, that they know that the NBA is not that far away, and that it's actually a reality. If they put the work and they can get there. And I think just watching the game grow, and like I say, the skill set that these kids have in high school now compared to when we were at that age, the game has evolved so much. And my son right now is preparing for nationals in 2 weeks' time, and they're doing 2-a-days every day leading into nationals. And I think back to school, if we had 2 trainings a week, that was like that was a lot. So just how much kids are training, they're taking this game very seriously. They're trying to get to college, a lot of kids, and again, not only improving their basketball, but also getting an education as well. So it's certainly it's become very big in New Zealand and Australia as far as a pathway to be able to, I guess, get your success in life started as well.
Just one last one from me, Dillon. Basketball's been such a huge part of your life, obviously, and it's been a full-time job for you pretty much for the last 20 years as a player, and then you move straight into the front office role. Do you know what you want to do next? What are you hoping to move into in the short term?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and for me, I talk about basketball life as this. We just went to a funeral of a coach, an American coach who had been here for 20 years, had passed away of cancer, and just the amount of people that were at the funeral. And I said to people, this guy's a basketball lifer. He gave his life to the game of basketball, and the basketball has been able to provide for me and my family, like you say, for 20 odd years. And I would consider myself a basketball lifer. So is the next step for me in basketball? I certainly hope so. I certainly hope it is. I feel like I've got a lot to offer the sport. I feel like I've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of IP in this brain of mine that I want to share with whoever wants to listen and learn. And I think, if I can stay involved in the sport in some way, whether it be in New Zealand or further abroad, I certainly would like to do that. But at the same time, I'm also realistic that basketball is still a growing sport, and it still doesn't have the roles, I guess, like your sports like, an AFL or a NRL or, a rugby, those type of things. It doesn't have those depth of roles that you can stay involved in the sport and be paid a decent wage. So, I would like to say yes, I'll be still involved in the sport, but I don't know where the next direction is for me. I would hope it's still going to be involved in basketball, though, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can argue that you've got a lot to offer. So I think the offers will come in thick and fast. It's just a matter of, I guess, picking the right one and being patient. So I'm sure you'll stay involved in the game, whether it's in New Zealand or over in Australia or maybe even beyond that. But I certainly think it would be a big loss if you're not. So let's hope it works out well for you. And yeah, thanks very much for joining us on this first episode. And I don't think we could have asked for a better guest.
No, definitely not. Thanks, Dillon. It's been our pleasure, and say hi to Nikki and the kids, and hopefully the sport is better with you in, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of opportunities coming your way shortly.
No, I appreciate it, Shawn and Chris, and I appreciate being the first guest on the show, and wish you guys all the best in your podcast, and I hope you get all the listeners that you deserve, and Shawn, and same goes to you, Shawn, with Gretchen and the kids as well, and we're overdue a catch-up, so I appreciate chatting to you today as well.
Thanks, mate.
On our first 2-minute drill segment on Basketball Hustle, supposed to be Shawn's segment, but Shawn's proving elusive at the moment, so Damian Martin, you're stuck with me, and unfortunately for our listeners, you're stuck with me because I'm sure you'd prefer to hear what Shawn had to say. But
I had to listen to him for 10 years, so no, this is much better.
That was my very first question, Damo. Podcast that me and Shawn are now starting up. You've known Shawn for 10 years now. You've played with him for 8 years. You played in 4 championships with him. You've known me for 10 years, unfortunately, as well. What went through your mind when you found out we'd be doing a podcast?
Oh, I thought, the two opposites have got together. So, I think it's going to be a good platform. Obviously, a lot of information between the two of you, both from a player's perspective and someone who's covered the game for a number of years now and seen the highs and lows of what the NBL can have to offer, not just the Perth Wildcats as a club, but I know you've covered a range of different teams, whether it be on NBL front or at a club level where you've worked one-on-one with them. So now I'm excited to tune in weekly and see what the two of you guys put together.
Now, the thing that stood out about Shawn as a player and as a teammate, I'm sure, was his professionalism. Mm-hmm. Now, he's not here today, so that probably shows where this...
That stopped when he retired, apparently.
So this might show where this ranks in terms of his priorities. As a teammate, what stood out to him? And can you tell us something we might not know about Shawn from the outside?
Look, he was the ultimate pro, and to be honest, there's 2 players in particular that stand out when I think of who I've learned the most from. Obviously, you have a lot of coaches throughout your career and your parents, but Shawn and Bogut, the 2 guys I've learned a lot from. And Bogut was more from a mental toughness perspective. Shawn was the whole package in regards to, what he did. He did every single cliche you've heard of, but he did them every single day, not just when the media were there, not just when we were preparing for finals, not just after a loss. And that goes from being early to training, lift hard in weights, getting on the court early before team training, practicing his game, staying late to work on his game again. But then it's all the other things like stretching, visualisation, ice baths, diet was impeccable. And he did it every single day throughout the course of his career. And one moment that stands out, in his last year here at the Wildcats, he was only playing sporadic minutes. And I remember we lost here on a home court game. and he got on the court for about 5 minutes the night before. And before we flew out to New Zealand, I was injured, so I had to come in and train while the boys were about to get ready for a plane. Shawn actually got one of the coaches to come in and rebound for him the morning of that flight, just because he wanted to prepare himself for that game if he stepped foot on the court again. And that's a guy that already achieved everything he can in basketball, but he still had a role to play, and he wanted to do it to the best of his ability, even if it meant getting up early, saying goodbye to the family a little bit earlier, to get an extra shooting session in the day of a flight to New Zealand. And not many players do that. I've been inspired by Shawn since day one. He's a leader by example, and those things he did on a day-to-day basis, they've trickled in and helped establish what's expected now as a Perth Wildcats player.
Jesse Wagstaff, your new...
I say that as he's a no-show to this podcast, exactly, so I retract everything.
Jesse Wagstaff, he's your new vice-captain. Is that just through he's the last man standing in terms of the veterans, or has he deserved it?
The old guys, yeah. What a lot of people don't know is Jesse was actually co-vice-captain last year, and I think even 2 years ago. Now on paper it only showed Greg higher, but Greg and Jesse have both been great leaders for a number of years. Greg's more of a leader. He's a verbal guy, he's a loud guy, and then when he got out on the court, he gave his absolute all, so he's inspirational from that capacity. Jesse's got one of the highest basketball IQs of any guys I've ever met, so it's been a natural progression that the older he got, the more he was comfortable speaking up, and whether it's in a one-on-one setting or collectively with the group, he's been a great leader for a number of years, so it was no surprise that he was voted in the leadership group.
You mentioned Greg Hire there. When you first got to Perth, you and Brad Robbins were inseparable. You lived together, you did everything together. Lockie Reed dubbed you the Bash Brothers there for a while. When did you realise that Greg had stolen him as your best mate?
Yeah, once they married sisters, I thought it's going to be tough to break into that family. So yeah, Brad Robbins and Greg Hire, they're married to Ainsley and Becky, who are sisters. So no, look, they're inseparable now, which is great. Actually, they live in Edgewater, I live in Edgewater, and so does Jesse. So the four of us will all be retired in a few years, playing C grade with arthritic knees up in Joondalup. So I love how close we've remained. We've all got young families now, and hopefully the kids grow up together and are as close as we are.
A lot of talk about the similarities between Mitch Norton and Nick Kay, and you and Matty Knight as a point guard power forward duo. Obviously you and Matty were tied at the hip for a long time, whether it was college or playing over in Sydney or here in Perth and playing on that MU team together. And obviously Nick and Mitch have been tied together closely now up in Townsville and Wollongong, and now in Perth. In 10 years' time, which duo is going to be remembered as the best?
Look, it comes down to the amount of championships you win. So we're lucky that Matty and I, we've got a few between us. But in saying that, it's the stuff you don't see, the intangibles, where you don't have to have any type of communication, you just know what the other person's going to do. I was fortunate enough to have that with Matty, and the amount of trust I had in him in both ends, whether it's to roll the ball into him for a game-winning shot or knowing full well I could crawl into my defender, knowing Matty would be behind there to be on the split line. Mitch and Nick have that. Nick was away a long time with the Boomers, and I've never seen Mitch more depressed in my life, so it's good to have the two of them joined again at the hip, and they're going to go on to do some special things together as that duo, and hopefully they've got a bit of help around them because, they're two very good players. You
and Britt obviously have your two beautiful children at the moment. What are you most excited about getting home to see when you think about seeing your kids, and what are you hoping to avoid while you're at home, and hope that the kids safe for Britt when you're not there?
I actually went shopping, just grocery shopping yesterday, and I think it's the first time in my life I've really understood what anxiety is. I'm never doing that again with a 3-year-old who wants absolutely everything, and then a crying 9-month-old. So look, the best thing is when you open the door and they yell, or Maggie yells out your name and she comes running towards you, and then you walk in and see Bonnie and she gives you a smile. So win a game, lose a game, have a good training session or a bad one, it's all forgotten about as soon as that door's open and your life takes a turn, and now you're just a dad, and that's all that matters. So it's great for life balance. In regards to what I don't look forward to, look, night time is still not smooth sailing. So I try and read a book, we try and have a few little routines, but at the end of it I'm reminded, just where I sit in the pecking order, it goes mum, distance, the Wiggles, the dogs, and then dad. So at night time it's all about mum and how much they want to cuddle and kiss her.
Last 5 or 6 or 7 years, you've had a good relationship with 94.5 here in Perth. Do you remember how that got started for you?
Oh, I'm not entirely sure. I think you may know more.
I might have. That might be where the question came from. So anytime you want to throw a thank you my way.
You set me up with that, did you?
I did.
I've enjoyed my time. So because 94.5 and 92.9, they're owned by the same owners, all part of Austereo. I've been lucky enough to go upstairs and downstairs now for the 2 radio stations for 10 years. But A long overdue thank you. I've always enjoyed my time, but I didn't realise where it stemmed from.
Now, this was a lot longer than a 2-minute drill, but it's meant to be Shawn's show, so Shawn's not here, so it doesn't matter. He can take over from next week and he can keep it a 2-minute drill. But
here's the only bit of advice Shawn's worthwhile listening to. I remember we had a daughter, a beautiful daughter, Hayley. He really was adamant about having a son. I don't know where he read it, but he got told that if you have a low testosterone count, it helps your chances of having a boy. And so every single day after training, he would have an extra long ice bath and then go home and, well, let's just say that now he's got a son. So he was adamant that's why. And so if you ever want a boy, have long ice baths, and that's courtesy of S. Redhage.
Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks to Damian Martin for joining us. Have you got some rebuttals that you'd like to run through, Shawn?
Oh, look, I will say that last story Damo said about ice baths, that is true. I actually learned that from Andrew Gaze. So, Andrew Gaze, myself, we were able to have boys. So I'm not sure if it's scientifically proven, but there's 2 cases where it did happen. And we've got Hayley, we've got Dillon, and, we're good.
And the 2-minute drill segment, you'll take over it from next week. What have you got in store for the players across the league?
Oh, look, I just want to ask those questions that probably don't get asked a lot of times, and find out that inside information give a little bit more insight into what makes these players so special.
Now, we're getting towards the end of our first episode here of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle. Plenty of excitement around the league. The round 1 action gets underway on Thursday night, obviously, with the first ever Melbourne derby. Pretty exciting way to tip things off with Melbourne United and South East Melbourne Phoenix. But before we get into that, everybody probably wants to know what your predictions are for the season ahead. Shawn, I'll chuck mine in there too, but I think everyone's here to hear what you might think. Let's start with who you think come March will be the champions for 2020.
Look, I'm going to predict Sydney, and the reason I think is, one, I like the recruit of Casper Ware. I think that it kind of fits their personality or their personnel on that team, but I also just think they're going to be extremely hungry. They've kind of had some seasons where they're extremely talented, but haven't been able to put it all together. But I think, I like the way they've recruited their new recruit, Didi Lozada. He looked amazing in that preseason blitz. So, that's who I'm going out with at the start. Now, this could change next week, but I think Sydney is the favorite at this stage.
Hard to argue, but I'm going to go with Melbourne United. They went so close last season, obviously, got to the grand final. And I think on paper, even though they've lost Casper Ware, that you could argue that they've got a better squad this season. I think Melo Trimble is ready to take the league by storm. He had a fantastic season in Cairns, but in a better team, I'm really excited to see what he can do as point guard. And Shawn Long, we know that he's got the biggest swagger in the league, and now I'm excited to see what he can do in that Melbourne setup. And yeah, I think for me, Melbourne look like being the team to beat right now.
Yeah, the only question mark I have is how does Melo and Shawn Long fit into their system as well? Melo is a scorer, but Melbourne United has so many scores around them. So I think he's going to have to take a little bit of a backseat some games. And, to me, they're might have a few weeks where they kind of struggle before they figure it all out. So that's my only question mark is making sure those guys fit into their system in that culture.
Yeah, it's a good point, because absolutely Melo's a scoring first point guard and Shawn Long's a scoring first big man. Chris Golding's a scoring first 2-guard. Casey Prather's a scoring first 3-man. So you've got plenty of guys there that
there's only one basketball.
Exactly. So we know Sydney's in your top 4. Who else will be in the top 4 come the end of the season?
Well, obviously Melbourne, I think, is in there. I think you've got to throw in Perth with the culture they've got. Anytime you've got Damian Martin and Bryce Cotton leading your team, you can't count those guys out. And then in that 4th spot, I'm going to go with Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. I think Brisbane obviously will be up there as well. But I just like the team that they put together, and I love Mitch Creek as a player. And I think when and that Roberson as well, he looks like he can really shoot the basketball and going to be an exciting player for them.
Yeah, tough to argue again. I think right now it looks like Melbourne, Sydney and Perth, you almost have to have a lock just because of how talented and experienced Melbourne and Sydney look. And when the Wildcats have done what they've done over history, until they don't make the playoffs, it's impossible to just not keep assuming that they'll continue to make it. So for me, that fourth spot is fascinating. I think Brisbane are a really good chance of doing it, but to me, their front court's probably their big question mark right now with Sobey and Glidden and Kadee in the backcourt. That's fantastic, but to me, they'll need to get some really good front court support from their imports. So I guess until we see that in action, it's a case of wait and see. All of a sudden, with Jerome Randall, Adelaide comes right back into the mix, so you'd have to consider them. The New Zealand Breakers look like they've got an exciting group as well, and the Illawarra Hawks are a great unknown. They're very young, but they could be incredibly exciting as well, and let's hope that the Cairns Taipans are a bit more competitive as well. But for me, just with the news over the last 24 hours of Jerome Randall, I might go for the Adelaide 36ers in that fourth spot.
Well, we'll see. We'll find out in a few rounds in to see. I guess we'll check back with our predictions, see how we're going.
We will, and we'll match him up with what Corey Williams is doing, your old mate as well, and see what he's got in store throughout the season as well. MVP, who have you got as your MVP right now?
Look, there's some great names out there. I think you've got to look at Bogut, obviously from last year, Cotton, Sean Long, Lamar Patterson, Randall. Even Roberson and Aaron Brooks. I liked what I saw there, but I think that from an MVP point of view, I think I'm going to go with Randall in the 36ers, and that's saying because I just think I don't see too many guys taking votes off him. And I think they will be competitive. They'll be fighting for that third, fourth spot come the end of the season as well with Randall. So I've seen all his workout videos over the off season, and it looks quite impressive. So if he can do some of those moves on a weekly basis in the NBL, he'll be unstoppable.
Yeah, he's put some videos out where he's just put on moves on people that they've never seen before happen in front of them. So it's a good point because he won't have too many guys taking votes off him. I think if you look at Mello Trimble and Casey Prather and Sean Long in Melbourne, they've got the problem of people taking votes off them. Probably in Sydney as well, Casper Ware and Bogut and even Kevin Lish have got the chance to take votes off each other there. So I think actually for the same reason that you've gone for Randall, I'm going to go for Bryce Cotton, where I don't know if Nick Kay, he looks like he's set for a fantastic season, but I don't know if he'll be a big vote getter in the MVP voting. And outside of that, I don't know who's going to be taking a lot of votes off him. Tariko White is a chance to, obviously, but yeah, for me, Bryce Cotton was as deserving as Andrew Bogut was last year of getting the MVP. I think Bryce Cotton was incredibly unlucky, and I think right now Bryce Cotton's got a point to prove to show that he's the MVP of the league again, and he probably deserves to be the favourite coming into the season.
Well, he is healthy as well. So last year he had that niggling wrist injury in the game against Brisbane. So he's healthy. So that's not good news for the rest of the league.
Most improved player. It's always a tricky one because until we see the players and how they've improved, it's difficult to know who has got better. But who would you think looks most likely right now?
Well, I think Majok Dang in Cairns. I think he's been an exciting player for a number of years in Adelaide, but I think he's going to have a lot more responsibility in Cairns, and so I think that he's definitely one. And also the other one I would say with Jack McVeigh, I think he's I really like the way how hard he played towards the end of last season. Didn't get a whole lot of run early in the year in his rookie season, so I think he's one to look out for as well.
Yeah, and Majok Deng was one that stood out to me, but you've taken him, so I'll go Will Magnay at the Brisbane Bullets. I think with the way their front court's shaped up now, I think he and Matt Hodgson are going to have really big seasons for him. So I think he's going to play some reasonably big minutes, especially early on in the season for the Bullets. And he's a 7-footer. He's got all the tools in the kit bag. He just needs a chance to show what he's capable of. So I think Will Magnay's set for some big things. Moving on to Rookie of the Year, it's an interesting one because I think it does include the Next Stars players now, which obviously included Brian Bowen last year and now includes LaMelo Ball and RJ Hampton and company this season. There's some good Australian talent too coming into the league as rookies as well, but right now, who's the standout for you?
Well, I think, LaMelo Ball and what he's going to bring to this league is tremendous, and especially from I guess, exposure point of view in the USA. RJ Hampton, I think he's probably the most complete player of the three there that you talk about. But from preseason, I think Didi Lozada from Sydney, I think he's going to play an important role for him and just be able to shoot the ball and spread the court. So I think he's, to me at the moment, he's the favorite for rookie and best next gen player. So, but it's exciting. I think, and watch out for Angus Glover from Illawarra. There's some big raps about him. Obviously had some injuries over the last couple of years, but sometimes that really spurs you when you get on the court, you're going to make the most of it. So I think he's kind of a dark horse in there as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think as far as those young players coming to the league, I think Didi Lozada just looks unbelievable. As good as LaMelo and RJ look, I think Didi just looks like he's a ready-made player already. He looks like he's the complete package. I saw him play for Brazil at the World Cup and he put in some terrific performances there. You have a look at what he did at the Blitz and he looked tremendous. You have a look at some of the Kings games as preseason games now coming into the season. He just looks like he's ready to lead this team, and that's a team that has Bogut and it has Lish and it has Brad Newley there and it has Casper Ware, but he looks like he's capable of playing a massive role, and he's probably the one player out of them all that I'm most excited to see how he develops this season.
Yeah, I think so, but I think you also got to be careful with the preseason as well. I mean, I'm not sure Damian Martin's playing 110% in the preseason. He knows he's got to save it for the regular season. So I'm excited to see how are they going to go when they've been scouted, when defenses they know their tendencies and they're ready for them. Can they still produce some of the numbers that they've been putting up? We've seen in years past, you have guys that may put up huge numbers in the preseason and then it definitely comes back to reality come regular season. So, those things you still got to watch, but, I think their performances so far has a lot of excitement.
Absolutely. We'll put up those predictions on our social media accounts and we'll keep checking in throughout the season and you can hold us to account to them. But, it's just looking like it's shaping up to be a hell of an exciting season right now, and it gets underway Thursday night in Melbourne with Melbourne United taking on the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. Who are you expecting in that game, Shawn?
Look, I think Southeast Melbourne might get them because it's your first game. There's going to be a lot of adrenaline. I guess they're both in the kind of same boat. They're trying to fit all these new guys in, and sometimes you just don't know a new team, how they're going to play, what their offense is, what their defensive structure is. We saw that a few years ago when Melbourne brought in a new coach, and they were able to really blitz the league because the league just didn't know kind of what to expect. So I think that first game, there's going to be a lot of adrenaline. I'm picking Southeast Melbourne.
Yeah, I'm probably leaning similar just because of the reason you said. And also, David Barlow's out for Melbourne United this weekend, and also Casey Prater's under a little bit of an injury cloud as well. So not quite at full strength, Melbourne United, and I think Southeast Melbourne are really desperate to make a statement in this first game as well. So yeah, I might go for them as well. Moving on to Friday night, up to the far north, and the Cairns Taipans. Important for them to try to get off to a positive start after they had a horrible start last season and they were never able to recover. But they're hosting the Sydney Kings, and that's a massive task.
Yeah, you got to think Sydney are definitely the favorites in that one, and high expectations for them. But it's tough to win up in Cairns. Even last year, you still had to play reasonably well to get a win there. It's not a place that you just walk in, and there's a few more nerves in that first game than other games as well. So we'll see how Sydney handles it. Can the star-studded lineup of the Sydney Kings handle that with the new coach as well? So it's going to be, I'm excited about the new season, and there's a lot of storylines to see how it all plays out.
Absolutely. I think it's tough to go past Sydney, but I'm looking forward to seeing the Taipans first up too. Then in Perth, grand final rematch on Saturday at RAC Arena. You'll be there as part of the commentary team, Shawn. Melbourne United and the Perth Wildcats.
Well, look, it's tough to go past the Perth Wildcats in this one, and obviously Melbourne playing a few days before back in Melbourne. The second game flying over west. I think you got to pick the Wildcats at home, but I mean Melbourne United. I think we've talked about their talented team. So, but it's a tough weekend for them. They don't want to start 0-2 and be behind all these talented teams out here. So I think that's a tough ask for them. I think they'll be glad if they get a 1-1. They'll be ecstatic if they get 2-0 over this weekend. But I think I'm picking Perth on Saturday.
Yeah, and then they head off to the United States for 2 games against NBA opponents as well. So it's a tough start for them. I think the Wildcats as well, especially now that Jericho White and Mitch Norton have both been cleared to play, so they'll be at full strength. And I think they'll be looking to start things off with a bang on the afternoon when they unfurl that championship banner once again. So I think the Wildcats, but grand final rematch is a great way to start off any season. And then we finish off round 1 in the Gong, Illawarra Hawks, who will have any number of NBA scouts watching them every single game they play this season, up against the Brisbane Bullets with Andre Lamanis returning to club duties. He's got Nathan Sobey on board, and that looks like it's probably a 50-50 game right now.
Yeah, it's a tough one to call. Illawarra, a lot of excitement there with Matt Flynn taking over the program, and obviously LaMelo Ball, Aaron Brooks. I think he's the dark horse for MVP as well. And I like the signing of Josh Boone. It just really makes. I think it helps AJ Ogilvy as well, because they can kind of keep him, bring him off the bench, and I still think he's a handy player in the league and can produce some big moments. So I'm picking Illawarra because they're at home, and so those are my predictions in the first week. Yeah,
I'm going to go for the Hawks as well. I like that they've kept some experience around with Dave Anderson and Ogilvy and Tim Conrad as well, and then they've got Aaron Brooks. I think he's someone that we haven't mentioned until now on the show, but he's right up there. He's on the same level as a Casper Ware or a Bryce Cotton or a Jerome Randall or a Melo Trimble, if not above them, given his NBA history. And as long as he's taking things seriously and he's playing up to his level, he's capable of being right up in that MVP voting. And I think, come Sunday, I think the Hawks will start things off well on their home floor.
Well, I think one of the things that impressed me about Aaron Brooks is he's motivated to come play. You see a lot of these guys, they finish their NBA career and they're just kind of going to I guess, experience a different culture, but not really motivated to I guess, produce their best. But he seems one that wants to come out here and prove how good a player he is. And so, I think that's great for one, a lot of respect for him, but I'm excited to see how he goes.
Absolutely. So there you go. First episode down, Shawn. Like I said, wouldn't be here without Hoops Heaven. Basketball Hustle, you can check us out through all social media accounts. And if you're listening to this, you've found us through your favourite podcast means. So let's hope that you can join us every week here, because we're pretty excited about what we can provide to you this season. And we'll be back again next week, a couple of exciting guests, and we'll bring you all of the news and results from round 1. And Shawn, thanks to you for putting your faith in me to join us, and let's hope that this is an enjoyable ride for us.
Thanks, Chris. I'm excited about it, and we'll see you next week.